The Big Ten East is on the line in Columbus. Time to play ball.
Well, you know, they haven't had a team come within 24 points of them, guys. Maybe they should be flattered that the line is only 18 or 19 for Penn State.
Hey, it's going to be a three-ring circus with Fox pregame, game day game, pregame, all that stuff. Let's see how the Nittany Lions do. Blue-white tailgate is next.
In the last 5 years, in the last 4 years, I should say, there are only 5 programs that have 40 wins or more. Alabama, Clemson, Oklahoma, and the 2 you'll see Saturday, Ohio State and Penn State. They're the only 5 that have 40 wins or better in the last 4 years. We'll see them on Saturday. So coming up on the show, we'll preview the game for you, break it down. We'll hear from Pat Frymuth, Shaka Tony. But first, our PSECU update. So let's go to the update desk and Josh Sperber.
Some unfortunate news in Happy Valley as Sean Clifford revealed that he received death threats after the loss against Minnesota. He received nothing but support from his coaches and teammates.
That's just unacceptable. You know, come on, we're better than that. Especially if you're saying you're a Penn State, or you got to support, thinking through wins and losses. You know, you got to remember that he's still a person.
Senior Day for Penn State is officially scheduled. It'll be a 3:30 kickoff against Rutgers on the Saturday after Thanksgiving. Senior punter Blake Gillikin was named Academic All-District for the 3rd straight season. He's now on the national ballot for COSIDA Academic All-American. He was also named a finalist for the Pop Warner Award, given annually to the senior who excels on the field, in the classroom, and in the community. A community that Penn State fans are familiar with, Nittanyville, was named the Taco Bell Live Más top student section in the entire country on this week's rankings. Clemson, Iowa, and LSU round out the top 4. In the recruiting rankings, Penn State's recruiting class of 2020 was named 13th in the country, ranked 3rd in the Big Ten. So far, they have 28 commits, 9 of whom are 4-star recruits.
So Gilligan's Academic All-District. You get there because you've never had a B. Ironically, none of the three of us have had B's. All right, so
no A's.
I didn't say how we got there. Hey, Minnesota, Todd did not end up beating them twice in this scenario.
You know, they've corrected some things that they've had issues with in the past, right? 4-minute offense took care of that, and they didn't get this 2-game streak. You know, they didn't get that big loss that affected them the week after. Came out and got the job done. It was a little bit uneven at times, but you know what? The end result was what they wanted, a victory.
And they got the turnovers we talked about last week. The
That's right.
turnover is going to be critical, and the fake punt that Indiana, I mean, my 12-year-old daughter said they're going to fake it, so it wasn't a big surprise. She's smart, not that smart, but that's a turnover too, so they got the points off the turnovers they needed.
Freshman snapper wasn't supposed to do that. They actually made a mistake on that play. All right, so now let's get the race to Indy. In the race to Indy, here are the standings heading in. Winner of Penn State, Ohio State in the driver's seat. Winner of Minnesota, Wisconsin in the driver's seat. Done. It really didn't take long to cover that. So this sets up the title game and the series with Ohio State, guys. This has been a lot of close games, but you can look at the series record between the two. It's been close over the years.
Yeah, especially the last couple of years, right? It was just 5 points separating the last 3 results, 14 and 20 overall in Ohio Stadium. That's kind of the big one. I don't remember many of those 7 wins here recently. It's been a little while since they've won in Ohio Stadium. It's been since 2011, I believe, and of course everybody knows how close they got 2 years ago for that one, until JT Barrett all of a sudden lit it up and made it look like it was a 7-on-7 skeleton drill. But look, they've got a chance, and I know a lot of people go into this and say, well, you know, look at the point spread. They don't have much of a chance. They've got a chance, no doubt about it.
Well, surprise everybody, the point spread doesn't actually give you 18 points when you start to do it. It's nothing. And, you know, Urban Meyer really, we'll talk about this film room, when he got there, really changed Ohio State, took them to a different level. Because when you look at Penn State, we'd won 2 of the last 3 in Ohio Stadium before Urban got there, and they kind of made that a touchstone for them that they're not going to get beat at home.
Well, Todd mentioned the point spread, and believe me, Pat Frymuth and the Nittany Lions are well aware of it.
We don't really like to pay attention to that stuff, but I mean, I did see that. It definitely kind of got under my skin, kind of as motivation and all that kind of stuff. But not really focus on that or underdogs or whatever, but we're going to go in and compete and play hard.
So the last 3 games between the two have been absolutely epic. Let's look back at how the last 3 games have played out. Might as well start out with the high point, and that is Grant Haley. Marcus Allen, Grant Haley.
Yeah, this is how they have a chance, guys. They're going to need something like this probably to happen with special teams. You know, there's 3 phases to the ball game, right? We're going to talk a lot about offense and defense, but special teams will come into play.
Well, ironically, it came into play the next year with Ohio State one because they blocked a punt, which then helped turn the game around late. So, yeah, it works both ways.
Let's just focus on the 2016 highlights, can we? I mean, that's a good spot. But again, it's going to come. Penn State's going to have to get some turnovers. They're going to have to make some plays with special teams, and they can do this.
Yeah, and when we get to the keys later, we're going to talk about the role field position plays in this because, you know, we talked about Ohio State's ability to overcome some field position last year to win.
And finishing in the fourth quarter. It's part of why they made some adjustments with 12 personnel and those types of things to be able to finish in the fourth quarter because they weren't able to the last 2 years against the Buckeyes.
Well, Ryan Day's done a heck of a job so far for this program. To this point, they haven't lost. We'll take a closer look at Ohio State as we continue with more after this. Well, if you take over the Ohio State coaching job, it seems of late you get off to really good starts. So let's get to our Coach's File, presented by our good friends at McClanahan's Penn State Room in downtown State College, the Ryan Day Coach's File. Jay is very impressive. He hasn't lost.
No, and you know what? That's not even the best start in the last 10 years for an Ohio State coach. Urban Meyer started at 24 now. So if you want to take over a job, you want to get to Columbus.
Yeah. And Todd, when you look at what they've done so far, they, quote, have not skipped a beat.
Was that for real? Well, I mean, these numbers are just insane. I mean, 24-0 for Urban Meyer starting out, 13-0 for Ryan Day. I mean, think of it in these terms. I mean, Coach Franklin, something happens, but whatever, and Brent Pry steps in or whatever, as an example. 13-0. I mean, these are just amazing things that they're doing. And, you know, the roster's just littered with talent at every position. I mean, you watch an NFL game now, and, you know, you got it's secondary you, it's wide receiver you, it's running back you. I mean, they're littered with talent.
Okay, so are college rosters.
Yeah.
Hey, remember, Joe Burrow transferred out of this program, and he's at LSU right now, which brings us to Justin Fields, the quarterback. He transferred in from Georgia. He got the waiver to play right away, and has it ever paid off? James Franklin, who recruited Justin Fields, at one point verbally committed here, has always been impressed by him.
Come up with your list of things that you're looking for in terms of, you know, characteristics, you know, height, weight, speed, intelligence, you know, release, accuracy, touchdown to interception ratio, win-loss percentage, all the things we look at when we're evaluating and studying quarterbacks. You know, watching them in games, watching them in practice, watching them throw live. They checked a lot of boxes.
Oh yeah. He checks a few boxes, guys.
Yeah, that win-loss percentage one's a pretty good one. He hasn't lost.
13-0, yeah.
I'll check that one any day.
But again, when you're playing this kind of offense, and we've seen this with Penn State, when you have a quarterback that can throw and move, it makes all the difference in the world.
Well, it makes it far more dynamic, and it creates more threats because, you know, one of the things about Haskins last year against Penn State did a nice job of taking away Ohio State's run game and making him throw the ball down the field. And he struggled for a while. And with Fields, he's going to tuck that thing and go. And now those 8-yard runs we got against Minnesota are going to be 18-yard runs.
Yeah.
20
and look, you've seen this in recruiting situations before, Jay. You may lose out on a kid. You may be the one that got away. But he got away to Georgia originally. I don't think people thought he would be back in Columbus so quickly. And I think that's what makes it kind of unique, is that he got the waiver and he got the plate right away. Didn't even have to sit out a year. All of a sudden, within a year or two, here he is against playing in Columbus at the Horseshoe.
And guys, I think the prime beneficiary, and I thought this in the summertime, and I discussed this with groups, was going to be J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, this guy, you know, we'll show you the numbers, right? I mean, we've seen the rushing numbers. They're unbelievable. But it's the difference between, and you know, we talk about tackling too. We'll get into that a little bit. But if you miss on this guy, you pay for it immediately. He does not need a lot of room. He's shifty, he's fast, and oh, by the way, he could take you and move you a couple of yards too if he needs to make some contact. He's got pretty much it all.
Yeah, in the second half of last season, the receiver that really emerged for them was Chris Olave. He had been a big factor in special teams. In the Michigan game, he took them apart. He's been great all season. Now we get to that part where I feel like I'm doing that commercial. Guess who got reinstated?
Yes.
Chase Young. What a player he is. And let's face it, James Franklin knows you have to account for him on every play.
Chase is going to make plays, and that's going to happen. We need to limit the impact that he has in the game, and they're smart, because if you leave him at the same position the entire game, it allows you to have a plan and know where he's going to be with a lot more confidence. Where if you move him around, it makes it a little bit more challenging. But there's no doubt, on every play, we need to know where he's at and account for him.
The fact that they treat him like a chess piece, Todd, I mean, you have to find him.
Well, look, let's be honest about this. I mean, he had this suspension. He came back, missed, of course, Maryland and Rutgers. He knew he'd be back for Penn State. He's back. He was starting to become the front runner for the Heisman. I mean, he's changing the conversation. People were all upset about running backs not even being included in the conversation for the Heisman Trophy. Chase Young was starting to go to the lead run before that. And so it's amazing. He's going to make plays. He's going to wreck your game plan at some point.
And I want to bring this up. Malik Harrison's a heck of a linebacker, but Jay, it's a little different scheme in the secondary. They're one of the few teams that runs a safety and 3 corners.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it in film room, both Chase Young moving around and the secondary scheme, and that's going to create a matchup problem in your slot. We'll talk more about that. And, you look at this defense and you say, I think I'm going to disagree with you guys. I think the linebackers are vulnerability for Ohio State.
Yeah.
They're not as good as everybody thinks they are.
Borland and Warner, and I thought that, and I said that going into last year's game, that I thought that they were a potential liability. Right. And I thought it proved out that way.
Right.
Harrison, though, is a good linebacker. I think he's a good player.
I think he's improved dramatically. He's played a couple of years now.
Good player. Now, speaking of good Ohio State linebackers, we're going to have one coming up next. Joshua Perry is going to step in. We'll talk with him and get his analysis of this game as we continue with more of Blue White Tailgate after this. Welcome back, and very pleased to be joined by Joshua Perry from Big Ten Network. Joshua, welcome. Great to have you with us on the show.
Hey, glad to be on.
All right, I need to start with the obvious part. When you look at the 2 linebacking cores for Ohio State, led by Malik Harrison, and Penn State with Micah Parsons, what do you see?
2 really good linebacking cores. I mean, when you talk about what's going on, I think it's traditional Big Ten football. I think really great linebackers, obviously smart players, but both units play behind the line of scrimmage, and what I mean is they're very productive in terms of tackles for a loss, in terms of sacks, and I think that's what everybody wants to see. I think that probably in this game you're going to see 2 of the more talented front sevens in America, period. And I think a lot of it has to do with the way that the linebacker cores have come on. Ohio State struggled last year. I think Penn State's always been pretty solid. So I think the matchups for either offense will be predicated on how they handle some of the pressure looks and how they handle even just some of the straight rushes coming from that front seven, and then the different coverages you can play with linebackers that are great in coverage on both teams.
Josh, this is Jay. As you look at the Big Ten, there's a lot of people, I talk to people around the country, that seems like there's 4 or 5 teams that are kind of in a mix that can beat each other, and then there's Ohio State. But as you've seen different schools around the Big Ten, how do you kind of assess where the Big Ten is right now as a conference?
Well, first off, I think the strength of the conference overall in college football is great. Honestly, I think a little bit undervalued on the national landscape. And, when you talk about the top teams in the Big Ten, in Ohio State, Penn State, Minnesota right now, and Wisconsin, they can play with anybody. I think Penn State's probably the best one-loss team in my mind. Definitely some bias there. I think Oregon's really good. I think that when you talk about, obviously, undefeated with LSU and Ohio State, both of them are right there. I would take OSU just because of the defensive talent. So when you look at what's going on top to bottom, I think that the Big Ten does a really good job. Where a lot of people nationally don't see it is sometimes the talent down south. For example, LSU versus Ole Miss a week ago. Ole Miss is explosive offensively, and it's because you can point to NFL players on those rosters. When you look at the bottom-end rosters in the Big Ten, you don't necessarily see the talent jump out. So from that regard, I think people kind of overlook some of the teams, but overall brand of football, overall strength of coaching, just the players that you get in that are kind of ready-made products in terms of overall football players, Big Ten's up there with anybody.
Hey, Joshua, Penn State is 9-1. They're the 8th-ranked team in the country, and they're almost a 3-touchdown underdog in Columbus. That's kind of unprecedented. I mean, everybody should be really happy about it, but it's like the Buckeyes have taken their program to such an elite level. Give Penn State fans a reason why they can beat Ohio State in the Horseshoe this weekend.
Well, I'll preface it by saying a couple of things. The line opens up like that because Vegas knows the psychology of bettors. So Penn State, the last couple of weeks, has been a little bit of a wounded dog. They have a loss, and then they were in a game with Indiana. Flip side of that, Ohio State hasn't played with anybody close, and it's kind of been, it's been absolutely overwhelming. So just from that mentality, but this is the first game you can point to with Ohio State where the talent is going to be equated. And you've heard Ryan Day say that, but that's how people truly feel around Columbus, where you can point to players on Penn State's roster. You can say, all right, well, their guys can match up with our guys. Hasn't been like that. And so it's going to be a wake-up call just from that. And I think if Ohio State gets smacked in the mouth early on, kind of with the expectation of how they played where it hasn't been close, and they get a team who finally has the players that can match up. If they start off slow, the Buckeyes start off slow, it could be a long day for them. To me, I think the matchup truly becomes Justin Fields throwing the ball down the field. Has not been great downfield. He's been good intermediate. He's been good underneath. Penn State secondary has struggled with the pass game downfield. So if they can tighten that up, give Ohio State some trouble there, I think this becomes a real game.
Joshua, I'm going to put your number 37 back on you and ask you about playing that spot on the field when you have quarterbacks can move, because Sean Clifford and Fields can throw, but they also can run. So what kind of peril does that put a linebacker in when you have a quarterback, especially in the red zone, that can move?
That's a great question. And it's the one thing that kind of worries me when I look at Ohio State's defense. Wisconsin a little bit, Nebraska, Michigan State even was able to hit Ohio State on some quarterback runs, whether it was design runs, whether it was read options, or whether it was a quarterback just pulling the ball down and taking what he can get. I know from the linebacker's perspective, they're probably going to spy Clifford a little bit this week just to make sure that they can match up with him. But regardless, we saw last week against Indiana, had a great run where there was nothing there in the pass game, pulled the ball down, scored a touchdown. It's tough for a linebacker because you want to make sure you're getting to where you need to be in coverage. The team likes to play zone, but they also go man-to-man. So obviously that's zone's a little bit easier where you have vision on the quarterback and you can break when the quarterback pulls the ball down. But when they get into some of their man-to-man, they're going to have to be tight on their rules. Their guys are going to have to be sticky in coverage, and then whoever that underneath free player is going to have to be able to match up. And then when you talk about the red zone, I think that's a huge point too. Teams are way more effective in the red zone when they have the quarterback run scheme. And I was watching the coach's copy. I think Penn State did a great job against Indiana of incorporating the quarterback run. And I think a lot of them were truly called runs where they had the wide receiver on the one receiver side cracking the linebacker just to create that seam with a pulling guard from the backside kicking out the end. And it's a really great scheme. It's hard on your linebackers because they don't know if they need to kind of overrun the gap. They don't know if they need to sit down because the end's coming up the field. So it puts those players in a bind, and they've done a really good job of exploiting that.
And you did a great job of explaining it to us as well. Joshua, thanks so much. We really appreciate your time. Look forward to seeing you down the road.
No doubt. Have me on.
All right, Joshua Perry joining us from BTN. Coming up, we'll take a look at the Nittany Lion offense as they get ready to take on that Ohio State defense as we continue with more after this. All right, we're going to talk offense here because the crew thinks I'm offensive. Okay, so let's get to the Bobby Ray Hall Drive of the Week. Brought to you by our good friends at Bobby Ray Hall Honda in State College. 18 plays, 75 yards, 9:01 off the clock. Indiana used all their timeouts. Sean Clifford gets it rolling here. Jay, this was old-fashioned Penn State football.
Yeah, and I thought that was probably the play of the drive. Maybe the play of the game was the 3rd and 9 where Clifford took off against Indiana's man coverage, got that crucial first down.
And there's number 7, guys. That would be Will Levis coming out on the 4th down conversion, too. I thought they made some good coaching decisions, stayed aggressive, and finished this drive off nicely.
And then finally on 4th down, they pounded into the end zone to cap the drive. 18 plays, 75 yards, 9:01 off the clock. 61 yards rushing, 2 of 2 on 4th down. That works.
That works. In 9 minutes works.
It was a key to get the touchdown out of it, too, because the defense was allowing. You did not want to get the 6-point lead. You wanted to finish it off. They did a great job going all the way. 74-yard drive wouldn't have been as nice as a 75-yarder, right?
Exactly. Now our Planet Fitness Offensive Players of the Week. The 7 guys that make up the offensive line, because you have to include Miranda Thorpe as a combination and Walker and Des Holmes. Look, these guys did the job in this game. Did it all day long. Protected Clifford, opened up holes.
Well, it was interesting because afterwards Sean Clifford talked about, Steve, you mentioned finishing the game on their terms, right? And he said with 10 minutes to go, he knew they'd have a great drive because they were all talking about finishing the game on their own terms. And the offensive line took control on that 18 plays.
They sure did. And there's, of course, the finishing touchdown again by Sean Clifford. Look, they went for it on 4th down. They got it. Okay, so we talked about the offensive line. Josh Sperber, a deeper dive into an offensive group that has become from question mark to positive.
Penn State has moved the ball well on offense this season and ranks 15th in the country in scoring offense. A big part of that is due to their offensive line.
I feel like they've been playing fantastic all year, but they just keep taking it up a notch, and it seems to surprise me. Guys are always working, always trying to get better, and like you guys say, like you've seen it. Them guys are always striving to be greater.
The unit was criticized last season and lost 2 starters to the NFL draft. But they came out strong in 2019 and now block for an offense that averages over 400 yards per game.
I think the blocking has been great. I think the whole O-line, even Mennett and Fries and Gonzo, being the older people, the veterans of the room, taking great pride in what they put on film every single time they step on the field. And it really relates back to practice. They practice hard so much through the whole season in camp and in spring ball, and they take great pride in moving the guy across them, make moving for the running backs and open up holes.
They've opened up holes that have produced 100-yard rushers in back-to-back games and scored more touchdowns than any other Big Ten team this season, except for this week's opponent. For that, you must credit the depth that has emerged on this young front line.
Obviously, just like at the running back position, if someone is hot, you have the ability to stick with them. But our rotation on the O-line has been pretty consistent.
Penn State's line is coming off a strong game that included an 18-play, 9-minute drive to seal the win. But they may need to exceed that output against Ohio State, who is ranked #1 in total defense in the nation.
Interesting, because J.K. Dobbins has 6 100-yard rushing games this season. Now, albeit he has not been playing full games. Penn State has 6 100-yard rushers during the course of the season. But, Jay, they have to match up with that Ohio State defensive front.
Well, it's a strong group. It's a group of guys that move a lot in their scheme, so it's not going to be a lot of fancy stuff, but they're going to have to be able to get to that second level and take care of the linebackers if they want to run the ball north and south.
Well, and the defensive line for Ohio State doesn't want to just play at the original line of scrimmage. They want to move the line of scrimmage into your backfield, and they want to play in your backfield. So I think it'll be interesting to see how they try and take Clifford out of the run game and the read option if they have someone that just makes a beeline straight for him, and try and make him to make a quick decision on what they're going to do in the run game.
So let's move it forward here with our Tale of the Tape, brought to you by GoPSURV.com. So I get a text message last week, and the text message I get is Sadowski holding green M&Ms.
They were good, man.
My text message was stuck in traffic running my route, which they still haven't figured out in week 9 or 10.
Oh. 9.8 points a game, only 91 yards rushing game. Look, you expect all the defensive numbers to be awesome. They've been taking people apart with their defense.
Well, look, they've done some things from last year. They struggled at times. They were more complex in their scheme. They had blown coverages and things like that. They've really settled that thing down. Morrison, their new defense coordinator, has gotten them playing really, really hard, and the secondary is tackling really well.
I keep looking at the graphics and I'm like, is there a number missing there? I mean, there seems to be less numbers than maybe there should be on those graphics. Right. But I mean, look, it's telling. What they're doing to opponents is special as far as the amount of win, how much they're winning by. But this is a different opponent than what they faced so far. I mean, what game are you going to go to and say, oh, they took apart Cincinnati? They've taken apart decent squads, but as Joshua Perry mentioned, this is a roster that equates to what Ohio State has to do, and it's going to be interesting to see how Penn State comes out. They've game planned well the last couple of years against Ohio State, so I think the first quarter and a half was going to be really telling.
Well, last week what Penn State did against Indiana, that when they got to the red zone, they finished with touchdowns. And Pat Fryermuth knows against Ohio State that has to be a critical part of the formula.
We definitely have to take our red zone opportunities when they come. We definitely got to take advantage of it. That's something that we've kind of lacked the past couple of weeks. We definitely have to watch film on what they do and what their tendencies are in the red zone and exploit that. And we just got to focus on that and make sure when we get our opportunities in the red zone, we come away with touchdowns.
I'll tell you, in an area where Penn State's really ratcheted up the numbers actually has been on third down, Jay. Why?
Well, I think part of it has been Clifford has emerged on some of those third downs as a run option to get those first downs. And I think that's been a big, big difference in terms of what they've done on third down. And they've done a better job keeping themselves in manageable third downs, which they're going to have to do Saturday.
I want to touch on that, the manageable third down situation, because Clifford's completion percentage has not been good the last 4 or 5 games. They're not doing a great job with the short passing game. He's just a little bit off with the running backs, and I've talked a lot about that maybe being a third option. It would be nice to see that get going this particular game, because it won't be manageable situations if you have too many incompletions on first and second down against Ohio State. So they need to just a little bit more effective in the short passing game.
Well, in fact, and I mentioned that last week against Minnesota, the first 11 first down passes that they threw, they only completed 2. That meant you had 9 second and 10s. This time around, in going through their first down passing, they were right where you needed it to be, and it made a big difference. So, I mean, that does make a big difference in the manageable part of what you're trying to do. Coming up, we'll take a look at the Nittany Lion defense as they match up against that Ohio State offense. We'll talk more about green and M&Ms and so forth after this. All right, welcome back. Penn State had a bye week. I thought the positioning of the bye week was excellent. But since the bye week, guys, teams have been able to throw the football. Why?
Well, I think, we've been talking about it in the film room and stuff all year. People that have the ability to throw the ball at the quarterback position have had success throwing the ball against Penn State. And the last couple of weeks, we've played quarterbacks that could do that. And wideouts.
Well, I think a lot of it is opponent-driven. I mean, they finally had some quarterbacks that could actually throw the ball. And we talk a little bit about the pass rush, too. And you mentioned it last week in the film room, Jay. You're not going to get to Peyton Ramsey. He's getting that ball out in a second and a half. And that's what they did. Quick, short passes. And he's elusive enough to avoid some of that stuff. So, if it's Justin Fields, if he wants to wait a little bit longer and get the guys downfield, then that pass rush might have another second or two to get home.
Yeah, Wisconsin sacked Justin Fields 5 times, but he has not been sacked the last 2 games, but they're not going to be obviously the same category as Wisconsin. So let's look at what we call the air raid that's happened against Penn State the last couple of weeks. I think the most disconcerting part is the 80%. I think at least to me, is that how you look at it too, Jay?
Yeah, and if you look at Minnesota, it wasn't short passes. They were throwing the ball down the field.
That's right.
Indiana was more of, they were running some spacing and underneath things, and it was part of their run game, so you expect that. But that's been the 80%. And you look at the Minnesota game, not a hand on the ball. Right. At least last week, Reed had the one that was 7 points.
And Parsons.
Yeah, but Reed had that one. I'm like, oh, here he goes. Oh, he forgot the ball. And he kept running, so he fooled me.
That was going to be a touchdown, too.
No question.
That was a pick 6. No doubt about that. All right, so let's get to our Planet Fitness Defensive Players of the Week. We talked earlier about the Ohio State linebackers. Well, last week the Penn State linebackers played really well in this game. Yeah, I mean, even on kick coverage, they're around the football. Jan Johnson gets the recovery here. I mean, that really started it for Penn State in this game. And then Ramsey. All right, so Stevie Scott, no. Taken out by Cam Brown. All right, so we're going to try it again. Ramsey's going to throw it, and Micah Parsons. I mean, they all got involved. Jesse Luketa got involved. Ellis Brooks got involved. I mean, they played well.
Yep.
It's a good group.
Yeah, speed, strength, and a little bit of height, too, right? I mean, Joshua Perry, who we talked to earlier, he's listed as 6'4". Can't always trust those roster length. He's probably 6'3". But, Cam Brown, Micah Parsons, look, when in defense, when you get in pass defense, and if you're going to drop back, you can get those arms up and knock the ball down a little bit. Some tip drills, some interceptions could happen from that. Those are the types of things that you're going to look for, and also maybe in blitzing to get home and shadow Justin Fields. So they're going to have a busy, busy afternoon in Columbus.
I think it's been your best show Wonder what changed that. It may have been the green M&Ms from GoPSURV.com, because that brings up our tail of the tape as we take a look at the Penn State and Ohio State groupings here. Look at that. Wow, they seem to score a lot of points. But the disconcerting part's the 287.
Yeah,
Jay,
if Ohio State comes out and can run the ball for 287 yards, and for a number of years, the team that ran the ball for more yardage won this game for the first 10 or 12 years we were in the Big Ten. So I think that's going to be one of the telltale things on Saturday. And it looks like it's going to rain, so that could be an issue too.
I hate to point out some of those numbers are based on 3 quarters of play from the starters as well. I mean, they really could run up even higher numbers than what they did in those graphics. But it is telling. I mean, 287 yards on the ground rushing. They have not faced a run defense like this. And Antonio Shelton back, the guys in the middle. I mean, they're going to be able to clog some things up. You guys aren't, look, it's impressive everything they've got just about, but not so much as impressed, Steve, with the offensive line. You've mentioned that might be an area that could be exploited a little bit, and that may be difficult for Ohio State to run the ball.
Yeah, there are a couple matchups that benefit Penn State. I think the linebacking play outside of Harrison is, okay, it's good, not great. I think the offensive line for Ohio State actually is not their best, but Fields makes up for that. He makes up, I mean, that quarterback makes up for a multitude of sins.
Yeah, you can't chase the ball because he may pull it and get you 15, 20, 30-yard runs. And I think the other thing is when you look at Wisconsin was able to get to Fields. Fields the last couple of weeks has done a better job of throwing the ball away in some of those situations too as well. So he's maturing. You forget he's a freshman, really, in terms of playing.
Yeah, so let's get now to J.K. Dobbins, a heck of a player. Shaka Tony knows that on the list of things you have to take care of, number 2, J.K. Dobbins is certainly on that list.
J.K. Dobbins is a beast. You know, you turn on the film, he's electric. You know, one guy miss and he might take it to the house. So we got to be in our gaps, got to be sound, play our system and defense, no hero ball, and everybody has to do their 1-11 so we can be great.
You just said something really important, no hero ball, right? Play and be gap sound. This is where I feel Fields has made Dobbins better. Because Haskins, I think, and Weber held Dobbins back. He still gained 1,000 last year, but held him back. He's more dynamic now because of Fields.
Well, the other thing, too, is no question. And you take Dobbins out, and a guy named Master Teague, who has one of the best names in college football, comes in, and he's run the football. And it's going to be important early on to not panic, because Ohio State is averaging 31.8 points a game in the first half and has scored 203 points in the second quarter. So they may not kill it right out of the gate, but you got to weather that storm the rest of the half.
There's a game called Pick Your Poison, and that's the way it works with Ohio State.
Exactly. Yeah, you have to make the choice. We'll see if you make it pay for it. Film room after this.
Welcome back to the show. We are in the film room. It is all brought to you by Beer Bellies Beverage and Mr. Paterno. It's a good thing Penn State just has kind of a down week. You know, their opponents, nothing really to talk about. Their opponents 3 consecutive byes and then Rutgers. So I consider that another bye week for the team coming here. Meanwhile, 5 out of the last 6 opponents have been ranked in the top 25 in the AP for. So no breather here. This one, you had to really sink your teeth into this.
No question. And I'm breaking out the sweater vest to try and curse Ohio State. But let's take a look at exactly how dominant Ohio State has been since Urban Meyer showed up. 65-5 against the Big Ten, 96-9 overall. The last 3 years, they've won the Big Ten title twice, and you can see how they've been. And when you look also, 33 of the 49 guys that have started for them have been recruited from Big Ten states. So this is not a situation where they're out there chasing all over the country. But let's talk about their defense first, because that's where this game is going to be really a challenge. Not that the other side isn't. But we'll talk about Ohio State's basic scheme. You're going to look at, they're going to be a 3-linebacker, 4-down guy when Penn State is in their 3-wide-out set. The difference is they play a corner on the slot. They're going to make these 7 guys handle this thing. So that's going to put pressure on the outside guys who have not really produced yet to make plays. And then can Ohio State get to Sean Clifford with 4 down guys if they can? Going to be a long day. And a matchup, tight end and linebacker, and Ohio State plus 13 in turnovers. Let's take a look at the video here. Again, they're matching up there. You've got to beat those guys one-on-ones, and the turnovers are a big deal for Ohio State. And here's an example where they complete the pass, they go to the ball, they get the turnover, set their team up for some points. And if Penn State turns the ball over, it could be a long day. Now, how do you handle this man-free coverage? Quarterback run game, number 1, is a thing that you got to look for. crossing routes, pick routes, and screens, and play action. And the play action come into effect because the linebackers have got to play run, and that's going to give Freiermuth the shot to go one-on-one with this linebacker who's reading run. So let's take a look at how Michigan State handled that. You're going to see all three linebackers playing run. Their tight end, who obviously is not as good as Freiermuth, gets behind them and gets an 18-yard play. So you got to look for those kind of things. Now, Chase Young, everybody's talked about him. The only team that's been able to stop him all year is the NCAA. He's going to be there Saturday. Michigan State did a nice job with a tight end and an offensive tackle, slowing him down in the pass rush. And the other guys, well, Chase is at 13.5 sacks. The other guys have 17.5, so they can still get there. But if you take him out, that helps. So take a look at what happens to Chase Young on the end here. The tight end immediately takes the outside edge away, pushes him into the tackle, and then he's able to get out in the open there. But again, slows that thing down because he is that good. Now, they're not going to keep him in one place. They've lined him up inside on guards. They line him up wide rush here, standing up. And with a wide rush, this offensive tackle with crowd noise is going to be under a lot of pressure to get him. They get to a 5-down lineman line, which means every lineman is one-on-one with a down guy. So take a look at how fast he comes off the edge here. Again, that tackle from Michigan State with crowd noise has no chance to get to him, and there's a sack.
And they're only averaging over 50 points a game on offense. So you had a chance to look at that stuff. What do you got?
There's that too. But let's take a look at how good they've been on offense and how they've gotten it done. The best defense is a good best offense is good defense. 22 turnovers, 135 points for this offense on turnovers. And think about this, their opponents have only scored 98 points. So their turnovers have outscored their opponents. Now, they're 58.5% on third downs because, again, they have two run threats in the backfield, one a home run hitter and one a long ball hitter, maybe not home runs, but certainly triples, which holds this guy backside. And in their run game, take a look at how they come off. They get to the linebacker level, and they make a big play. And there's J.K. Dobbins. And if you miss on him, good night. It's 7 points. And that's one of the things Penn State cannot afford to have happen on Saturday night. Now, how do you handle the quarterback situation? You've got to maintain, contain. If you watch the game Saturday, think about maintain, contain, push inside, and get Justin Fields. Because if he gets outside, he's very good. Take a look at what happens when he breaks contain here. He's not always running when he breaks contain, and once he starts to break contain because he can run, he puts pressure on the linebackers to come out of coverage and handle him. Now, let's talk about how they get the ball downfield. They do a nice job here with him. They get a 2-deep side over here with a corner route, him crossing him underneath, and a 3-deep side. Again, when they line up in their trips, you've got wideout screens you got to deal with, you got run threats you got to deal with, and then you got a tall wideout over here. Take a look at how they do this here. Now, straight drop back, do a nice job on the protection. They get the corner route back there, and they get them behind the coverage because they've got the up in the back. The other thing is when they get in the red zone, very, very good. Again, 3 wideouts over here, so you got to play the wideout screens, run threat here, and now they've got number 9, who is a 6'4" receiver, and now you got a one-on-one. So let's take a look at what they do there with this one. Again, everybody's playing the other side. You get one-on-one. Next thing you know, they got the fade route there to the 6'4" guy, and there's your problem.
Programs, get your programs here.
Go.
What do we got here? Nice relic in our 150th anniversary of college football.
1978 program between Penn State and Ohio State. Woody Hayes, Joe Paterno, and Penn State went out there and won 19-0. And then the book, 1973 Football My Way by Joe Paterno. And in this book, Todd, there's a story about Penn State going out to Ohio State against number 2 Ohio State in 1964 and winning 27-0.
Boy, that would be something, wouldn't it?
Uh-huh.
All right, there you have it. We'll be back on the Blue White Tailgate right after this.
All right, doesn't take long for us to get to the segment you all crave. The good, the bad, and me. All right, so as usual, the angelic one goes first.
My good is the green M&Ms. They were delicious. I loved every single one of them. I still got some in my pocket. No, I'm just joking. The good is from a bad, and it's the Tua Tagovailoa situation in Alabama. Look, awful injuries, dealing with a dislocated hip. They keep saying Bo Jackson. Slow down on that. He should be able to recover, and they got to it quick enough. But just his attitude and a family attitude, just the communal atmosphere in college football and football in general. NFL players reaching out to him. Everybody knows he's a first-round pick if he can get himself healthy. So I hope the guy gets back healthy, and I'd love to see him play some more football.
My bad is pretty obvious. The Steeler-Brown melee, I think, is the right word. I mean, I've seen guys swing their own helmets at people. I've never seen somebody take somebody else's. But again, in the heat of a pro football game, there are emotions, there are things, and I think everybody needs to calm down and let the NFL office sort this out.
All right, so my ugly, and officiating has not had a good year across the board in any sport. The throw down the middle by Sean Clifford, not under duress. It's obvious Jahan Dotson breaks the route to the outside instead of the inside. My complaint has been, when it comes to officiating, have a feel for the game. Know what you're seeing. Then make the call. Right? All right. So let's get to our picks. All right. Brought to you by our good friends at the Saturday Daily Times. The Wayback Machine of Pictures shows our records to this point. Now, look at you, 4-0.
I'm pulling away in this thing. Come on, fellas.
My goodness, I can't believe it.
Actually, it's not. It's pretty close.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I'm not even going to make the wild card, so I'm not worried about it.
That's like Justify looking back saying, yeah, it's not close.
I'm picking the teams I want to win. And Baylor almost came through for me last week.
Okay, so we got Illinois, Iowa. Josh Sperber has that one. What do you have, Josh?
Iowa and Illinois are tied at third in the Big Ten West, and both have some serious momentum. The Hawkeyes coming off their biggest win of the season, and Illinois on a 4-game win streak that started with the upset over Wisconsin. I don't think they've got another upset in the cards, though. Hawkeyes are going to take it. Now, Jay's got the Mustangs and the Midshipmen. Who you got?
I'm going to make it audible and pick West Carolina at Alabama. I think I can get that one right. No, I got SMU at Navy, and like I've been doing all year, I pick the teams I want to win. I like Brian Norwood. I coach him at Penn State. He's at Navy. It's Navy. I'm an American. I'm going with Navy.
I always want our Navy to win.
Yes.
I'm really big on that. All right, so now I've got Temple and I've got Cincinnati. Boy, I like how Temple plays, the grit they have. I just think in Nippert Stadium, Cincinnati's got a little bit too much. Todd?
Do you subscribe to the chaos theory for the CFP? If you do, you want Jimbo Fisher and Texas A&M to go between the hedges and knock out the Bulldogs. I don't think it's going to happen. It would be interesting if it does, but I'm going to stick with Georgia. They're in the top 4. They're going to stay there.
The head and shoulder fake there made us think where you were going with A&M, huh?
Well, no. When you're in front, okay, and you're the lead dog, the view never changes, Jay.
He's just running the ball right now.
So in a moment, we'll get to our keys of the game. But James Franklin knows that two teams that really specialize in explosive plays will be going head-to-head, and they have to match it.
We're going to have to match their confidence, and we're going to have to match their playmaking. And matching their playmaking isn't just taking shots down the field and things like that. It's you're carrying the ball as a runner, as a running back, or as a receiver, and they come up to make a tackle, and they've made that tackle in the 9 or 10 previous games, and you break that tackle and go for 40, that sends a message.
Yeah, it sure does. All right, Blaze Alexander now. Keys to the game. Brought to you by our good friends at Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships. Jay, you send the message first.
All right. As we mentioned in the film room, Ohio State, 22 turnovers this year, 135 points off those turnovers. Penn State is going to have to avoid turnovers. If they turn the ball over, I don't think they can win this one.
We showed you earlier in the show opponents' 80% completion percentage against Penn State's pass defense the last 2 games. Sean Clifford's going to need to be somewhere near there because they're going to come at him hard. They need to get the short passing game going. I mentioned it before. I really think that's going to be a big key for the offense being able to move the ball.
I think field position will play an important role. I think special teams plays a big role in this game for Penn State to win, in the ability to finish and sustain drives. I mean, if you can finish, right, that makes a statement unto itself. All right. So, all set. Penn State and Ohio State in Columbus coming up on Saturday. For Todd, Jay, Josh, I'm Steve Jones. Thanks for joining us on the Blue White Tailgate.